So we're here talking about love, lies, and secrets with the impeccable and illustrious Stephanie C. Merrifield, MDiv. So let's talk about love, lies, and secrets. What do you mean by love, lies, and secrets?
Well, there's a lot of talk in society about love, but we all can come to that with different meanings. Words are flexible, they're not concretized. And of course, in biblical literature, there are a multiplicity of loves that are spoken of. So when I'm talking about love, I'm being gracious and in one way talking about sex.
Okay.
Because we need to have some candid conversation about sex. Sex is something that is inherently woven throughout biblical literature, and yet it somehow miraculously rarely makes its way into the pulpit or into the Christian ed classroom, right? And so anything that we don't talk about leaves a whole lot of room for error to come.
Okay.
So sex and marriage and the different iterations of marriage.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find most interesting is, people often talk about marriage as if it's something that's concrete, and they say funny things like, I want a marriage like in biblical literature. Well, which aspect in biblical literature? Because when we talk about sex in biblical literature or marriage in biblical literature, we have concubinage that we have to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So all of those other iterations need to come to the table, out of the dark, out of the closet, and we need to look at them head on. Particularly among people of color, African Americans, because historically we haven't owned our sexuality, right? When you are owned property and you don't have full discretion over your body and autonomy over your body, then though we have been emancipated physically, there's an emancipation that has to become mentally and emotionally, and we haven't gotten there yet.
So talk a little bit more about owning your sexuality. What does that mean to you? What does it mean for someone to own their sexuality? What does that look like?
Well, I think being able to be transparent and talk about what our real needs are. I think that some of the frustration in marriage is that we have a very stoic and sterile ideology about what sexuality in the marriage looks like. Is it just the missional position? Can a woman have a desire for a man? Because according to biblical literature, a woman's desire will be for her man, right? For her husband. According to Genesis chapter 3, verse 16, and your desire shall be for your husband. So that word desire means there's a longing. There's something that's anticipated. There's something that you want to get. Well, can we give women the right to have a desire when we simultaneously tell them that, pull your skirt down and make it should be this length, and you have to allow him to pursue you, all of these things. But when you look at biblical literature, Will, that's not really the case, because we uphold Ruth and Boaz, but the fact is that she went and threw down the gauntlet, right?
Okay.
She let a brother know, I'm interested in you.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And again, and I think another thing that we need to do in the church is talk about all the nuanced ways in which sex and sexuality come up. Because in that text in particular, we uphold it, and women often say in the church, I'm waiting for Boaz to come. Okay, well, you're waiting for Boaz. That's good. But the truth is that Ruth put on her perfume, put her hair up, her best dress, and went over. And when it says that she uncovered his feet, that's a euphemism. She uncovered something else that was a bit higher on him, right?
So
we need to give those things some context.
So what do you mean by that? Talk about that, because I know there's probably some people right now who would listen to this and say, what do you mean she did that? What she did, she just took off his shoes. Brother had all the Dickies.
Well, there were not shoes involved in this. Scholars are very clear. Researchers are certain that when it says uncovered his feet, that it's a euphemism, and it's talking about, they were intimate. They were intimate, and they were intimate before what we would reasonably call before a marriage had taken place. She expressed to him her desire to be covered by him. As a spouse, to be surrounded, for him to be her house bander, her husband, the ones that holds it together, and she initiated it, right, in unambiguous ways.
So then, in the act of sex, right? In the act of you saying they became intimate, physically intimate, they had sex, let's call it what it is. Was that what would be the equivalent of what she did in our modern era? Was that like a booty call? Was that just, you know, I mean, we know they eventually hooked it up, but what was that in modern terms? What does that look like?
Well, I think in modern vernacular, I don't know that we would necessarily be a booty call, but it was strategic in that she knew exactly what her needs were, that she needed financial stability, right? That she had a mother-in-law whom she had committed herself to, and that in order for there to be provision to them, that she needed to, one, know what was needed, and two, go to the one who was able to provide it, who had in fact already shown some interest in her and some concern. Remember, Boaz had inquired about who she was and had said, don't go and glean in anybody else's field, and then had told his servants, be mindful of her, don't embarrass her, don't I want you to leave something out for her to glean, right? So he's demonstrating that he wants to care for her and that he's concerned about her provision, and she reciprocated in responding and took it a bit further. So there's this dialectical relationship that's going on, right?
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not just I see you at the club, and you know what I'm saying, I like what I see, you like what you see, or you like what I'm doing, let's go in the bathroom, or let's go in this back here. Yeah. This is not what you're talking about. This is something a little bit more intricate, and from what you're saying, it almost has, marriage is a part of this in some way.
That's right.
It's a little foreign to me because I'm so used to the way we've done marriage in the last, how many, hundreds of years of Christianity, and the way, the iteration of Christianity we're living in. But you're saying that back then, this was almost like this was almost part of the marriage engagement.
That's
the way we would
process.
now get on our knee for most people and give a diamond ring.
That's right.
So then I question you is, what would have happened to Boaz if she would have, they got freaky deaky, they got done the nasty, got it in, as the young folks say, and he would have said, I'm not interested. Communally, what would have happened to him?
Well, I think there's room for disgrace. And so, you can look at some intertextuality, look at other places wherein a woman was the initiator. You can look at Tamar in her relationship with Judah, her initiating a pregnancy, which was a part of the covenant. You can look at, unfortunately, Tamar Bat David, David's daughter, who was raped by her half-brother, Amnon, right? Yeah. And she says to him before he rapes her, don't do this, ask David, he won't withhold me from you, right? So women negotiating or entering into the process of negotiating for their marriage. And then another place that we see it is with Isaac, right? So Isaac's wife, Rebecca, right? Had... she made a declaration when she was still among her family. No, I'm going to go and become a wife to this man. Right? And so there's a public declaration of a commitment that she initiated. So it was initiated on one level by his father in sending the servant to go find a wife from among his kinsmen, and her being able to commit and say, yes, I will go and become his wife. So when we look at that, we see the woman engaging in the process of negotiating the marriage, and her saying, yes, I'm going to go there. And if you recall, when she approached Isaac, who was out in the field, it says she put her veil on, and she dismounted, and she went into his mother's tent and became his wife. There were no more witnesses other than that. Right?
So basically, in the act of entering the tent and having sex, they were married.
That's right. And she had already made her commitment known in agreeing to what the servant had offered, and she went. Isaac was out of the negotiation process, essentially, right? We don't find anything in the biblical literature that suggests that he was. So that is a space for empowering women, for understanding that, yes, you want to be a wife, you better get involved in the process and stop standing on the wall like a wallflower, thinking that this knight in shining armor is going to come to you. You might need to engage in the process for yourself. You need to participate in the negotiation, and you need to have an expectation of what is being brought to you. Is that what you want? Right? Is this the man that you want? Does what he brings to the table excite you and elicit your commitment? Does it? You know?
Yeah. And very, very, very interesting. Now,
which I think in that answers some of the questions that contemporary women have.
Yeah.
Should I use online dating? Should I, you should do what it takes to get to where you want to go. We look at these bold women that are mentioned in biblical literature, and those are the ones that get mentioned in Jesus's ancestry, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the kind of shameful, shameless women.
Yeah. Now, let's bring this forward right now to our modern era. I'm gonna ask you a very direct question. I don't mean to be rude or disrespectful. Are you saying it's open season? Because things have changed, right? We don't have the same communal supports and infrastructure that we had back in their time, where these kind of engagements, these kinds of procedures were respected or would be honored. Like you mentioned, if Boaz would have had sex with her and then not honored it, there would have been room for disgrace, right?
That's right.
But nowadays, if a brother gets to have sex, it ain't there is probably some disgrace as far as some people may say, you know what, man, that's kind of foul, you did that. But he could still live in his society, right? He could still. So what does it mean for the sisters nowadays? I guess let me ask you a direct question. Are you saying let's get freaky? Anybody can get freaky anytime they want to get freaky?
No, I'm not suggesting that we should now practice promiscuity at all. I'm saying that the decisions that women were making in biblical literature that we see enumerated were decisions that included making a well thought out plan. So you have Tamar, Judah's daughter-in-law. That was a decision, right? I need to get from him what I'm supposed to have, and that's what happened, right? So women thinking about it and engaging in the process is what I am suggesting needs to happen.
Okay.
But we don't do that when we're told go to the women's retreat, and we're getting no new information because people aren't looking at the text critically to empower women.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha. So you're saying we've heard for 40, 50 years now, or maybe more in the black community, more recent, you know what? You got to wait for that man to come to you. Don't be walking up to no brother in the church and asking him for no number and then like that. You're saying, okay, listen, that's what's been said, but let's look at the Bible, and here are these examples of women being bold and being active in the plan. So, but what is your position on sex? Not to be controversial, but because I'm sure some people are wondering, like, okay, what's this sister talking about? She's talking about, can people have sex before marriage? Is it okay to have sex before marriage? Is there a biblical way to now deal with sex before marriage between you and God? Because you talked about Isaac and Rebecca were in the tent and no one else was there.
I think we need to define marriage, and I think that we need to acknowledge the fact that there are multiplicity of definitions of marriage. And here's a key example. You have some people that don't abide under the same roof, and yet they have committed themselves to one another's well-being and committed to sharing, to being with one another sexually, to intimacy, and to monogamy within that couple. So here's a biblical example. You have Samson, who with his first wife, she did not live with him. He would go and see her and take something and say, I want to go into my wife. Is that the most noble when we look at Samson and Samson's overall behavior? Maybe not, but nevertheless, it is one of the iterations of marriage. And so we need to look further than the Eurocentric legalized definition of marriage in order to understand the nuanced differences in biblical literature. We can't take it and take this reductionist vantage point and say we're getting at the truth. We're not.
So for the sister that may be listening to this and they want to get into this and they say, okay, well, what happens now, when you work with them, because I know you counsel people, you work with them, and this is your life's work here, and they come to you and say, look, man, sister Maryfield, I just want to get freaky deaky, butt naked, sloppy sex. What is your response to that?
My response first is, what is your level of commitment to that person? Are you saying that you are wedded to him and that's the person that you're going to be with exclusively for the rest of your life, and that your relationship will be one of mutuality where you're having this sloppy sex that you're talking about, that's very satisfying emotionally and physically, but do you also meet one another's needs financially? Or are you saying that I'm going to partake of the wine with you.